Welcome to Vote for Your Life, GRIO family, the weekly town hall where Black America comes first and we're tapping into our political power. We are just a few weeks away from the 2020 election, and the path to 270 electoral votes is underway as millions have already cast their vote. My name is Natasha S. Alford, VP of Digital Content at theGrio. And as always, we have a power panel of guests today who really need no introduction, but let's get it started. So first and foremost, Mr. Byron Allen, CEO of Entertainment Studios and owner of theGrio. Hey, Byron.
Hello, how you doing? Good to see you, Natasha.
He is a CEO, a leading author and activist and leader in the real estate development space, Mr. Don Peebles.
Good to be here.
Great to see you. And now this is one of my favorite journalists, award-winning, unapologetic, always at the White House holding it down, and she's an author, Miss April Ryan. Hi, April.
Hi, Natasha. Great to be with you again.
Good to see you again. And next we have the flyest, the realest, a comedian we love, an actress we love, the last Black unicorn, Miss Tiffany Haddish. Hey, Tiffany.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, girl. Looking good, looking good. And last but not least, iconic actor, filmmaker, businessman, and of course, recording artist, Mr. Ice Cube. Hey, Ice Cube, what's up?
Yeah, what's up?
Cube. Oh, Cube. Good to see you. All right, so we're going to talk about voting today. We're going to talk about the vice presidential debate. We're going to talk about everything. But I want to ask you the question that I ask all the guests, which is, what is at stake for you this election, personally and for the Black communities that you live in? So, Tiffany, do you want to go first?
Sure. I personally feel like what's at stake for me is the environment of my community. I'm very concerned about where I live. I still live in South Central Los Angeles, although everyone tells me I should be moving up into the Beverly Hills, but I love where I come from. I love it over there. It's actually the safest place to live, and I think that's why things are changing the way that they are when it comes to environmental issues. I'm really on top. I feel like local government is super important, and I think it's more important than anything, because who the DA is, who the sheriff is, who, the district, the DA is the district attorney, yeah, and who my council member is super important to me. And so that's what's most important, I feel like, right now. And especially for Black people, we need to know who is in our community, who's over our districts, who our council members are, so that we can, like, if someone is falsely arrested, we can call our council member and be like, man, why they put my baby in jail and he was just crossing the street? Like, you can harass them, and then they get their baby out of jail.
Yes, local politics is everything. That's where it's at. April, what about you? What's at stake for you?
What's at stake just this week alone has been unsuredness, something we have not seen. I don't recognize this. And what's at stake is stability for Black people. We are a community with the highest numbers of negatives. I keep saying it over and over again, but we're a community with the highest numbers of negatives in almost every category. And get this, before coronavirus, when we talk about the issue of bridging the wealth gap, they were saying that we were 285 years away from catching up with white America with wealth. Well, now in COVID, I bet you the number is over 1,000 years to catch up with white America. We have not had in 401 years stability for our people as a whole. And it's time for us to find some kind of stable ground in the midst of crazy. And yes, I call this moment crazy, because it is this week alone. And it's not just that, it's national security issues. And all of this compounds on us. It's climate change. All of this compounds on us. Like Tiffany Haddish said, the DAs and policing, all of this compounds on us. Everything is at stake. And the president asked 4 years ago, what do we have to lose? We have everything to lose, and we're losing it.
And I don't like to lose. I don't like to lose.
All right, Tiffany.
We don't have to. Don, what do you think? What is it that's at stake for you and for the community where you live, wherever you're based? And we have you on mute if you wanna unmute yourself.
I live in New York and I live in Miami and do business around the country. But April's right on point. I chaired the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation Board for the last 3 years of President Obama's term. And our whole focus was access to capital and economic empowerment for Black people. I mean, with more money, we can serve our community and move our community forward. Cube supports the community, uses its financial resources, and provides economic opportunities for Black businesses and Black entrepreneurs and Black talent. Byron does the same thing. He has this massive media platform, Weather Channel, and so much, and he's providing access to economic opportunities. So, and also we support our own organizations and so forth with money. But the biggest problem is, if you think about it, from today, the wealth gap is greater than it was in 1968. The income disparity is greater between Blacks and whites since 1968. And home ownership rates are lower today than they were in 1968. Give you an idea of how bad it is. We do business in Boston. The average, according to the Federal Reserve, the average household net worth of a Black household is $8 compared to $247,000 for a white household. So with these disparities, it's impossible for us to catch up without some more aggressive steps. And Tiffany makes this point. We can't just vote and we can't just focus right on the presidential election. We got to vote every time there's an election. We need to vote. We need to be focused on who our local officials are. I mean, think about it. This DA who took a weak case, made the case weak when he presented to the grand jury, he's elected. And he's elected by a lot of Black people. So
You're talking about Breonna Taylor.
yes. Yeah. And if you don't like that result, vote him out. But that's where, I mean, we've got to focus on economic empowerment. And with that, we'll get better education, we'll get safer communities. And if we can get equal protection under the law, which has got to be issue number one, I think we can make progress. But we can't, if Joe Biden tells us anything, he would be home watching on TV as well if it wasn't for Black people in South Carolina, because white liberals rejected him. White progressives rejected him. It boiled down to the Black people in South Carolina set him free, punched his ticket to ride. He was going nowhere. And so he owes Black people a great debt, and everybody needs to make him pay that debt. When he gets in January 20th, he needs to be working on paying that debt for the next 4 years. And that's, I think, where we got to be. And that means being engaged.
That's right. Q, what do you think? I'm sure the economic piece stands out to you as well. What's at stake?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's at stake is our future in this country. You know, we just can't survive. You know, this is a capitalistic society, and they only respect capital. I think in the past, we've really fought hard for dignity and set dollars aside. But I think now's the time to fight for dollars, because we all know, because we all come from somewhere, we know once we got the dollars, people gave us the dignity. And that's what's going on in this country. It's a country that, you know, it respects capital. It respects the almighty dollar. So I think we do need to focus on that. We also need to focus on, you know, pooling our resources and working together, because right now we're all fighting individual races, or, you know, we're fighting a race, but we all got our own little crews and we got our own little money and we're trying to do things. But at the end of the day, you know, most communities that's getting ahead are pooling their resources. And we got to understand too that it's a race. You know, the word minority has been a bad word for us because it puts us at the bottom of more people. You know, at first we were just getting through the 30% white people who were really racist and running this country. That was our main obstacle. But now when we put the word minority on top of us, now we're at the bottom of people trying to fight our way to the top. So we have to look out for ourselves. when you're running a race, we are a race. You don't look behind you and see who's catching up, and then we can all cross the finish line at the same time. So we have to, unfortunately, especially for Black Americans who are descendants of slavery, born and raised on the soil here, generation after generation, we have to make sure that we're in the front of these lines, because the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment were created solely for us, and everybody else is benefiting off those amendments. So we just have to get a little more serious on what we're doing, and it's more than just voting. It's uniting.
Yeah, Byron, you talk about that all the time, the ways in which we were exploited for our labor, and then the second we became free, they switched it up on us. What do you think about what is most at stake in this moment, especially when it comes to economics?
Well, I think what's at stake, literally, I think we're voting for our lives. We can't handle another cycle of this. We must be intimately involved with the political process. So there's a lot there. I bought the rights to look at the Coretta Scott King story, to look at Martin Luther King through her eyes, and that unbelievable, that relationship and that love that the two of them had. Coretta was in my opinion, the Queen of America, and she's the one who helped lead the civil rights movement side by side with Martin Luther King. She was the one who said, I want you to sit down with Bayard Rustin, Martin Luther King, and I need you to be comfortable with sitting down with him because he's gay, he's Black, and he's a communist. And Martin Luther King said, looked at her and said, he's gay? And she said, yeah, he's gay. And this was 1958 or 59. She said, Martin, who do you think we're fighting for civil rights for? We're not just fighting for civil rights for Black people. We're fighting for civil rights for all people, including gay people. And Coretta Scott King said that in 1959 and said, sit down with Bayard Rustin. He's really smart. Bayard Rustin was the architect for the Montgomery bus boycott. And Coretta told me when we broke their backs in the South, we knew if we could beat them in Montgomery, we could take over the rest of the country. And he was the one who came up with that bus boycott. So basically, Black people invented ride sharing because we were giving each other a ride and walking and hitchhiking for over a year. But it was Coretta who was singing and doing concerts and donating money to the civil rights movement. And she said the only time I ever got into a fight with Martin, because I asked her, I said I have to have a tough conversation with you about Martin and his, all of the alleged infidelity. And she said, Martin wasn't corrupt. Martin wasn't corrupt, and they beat him up 2 or 3 times every week and put him in jail. Every week they beat him up, and they couldn't buy him, and they couldn't bribe him. They couldn't get him to turn on Black people. And they figured the way to get to him was to try and get me to leave him. And she said to me, I would get tapes from the FBI, and they would say, these are tapes of Martin Luther King having sex with other women. And she said, well, I had 4 kids with him. I know what he sounds like. Wow. This is Coretta Scott King. And she says to me, Byron, as Black people, we had 4 major challenges. Number 1, end slavery. Number 2, end Jim Crow, which I think was more damaging than slavery, because that's when they systematically said murder us and lynch us and blow up our towns and incarcerate us. She said, number 3, achieve civil rights. And then she choked up and she said, number 4, the real reason why they killed my Martin, achieve economic inclusion. And she said, that's why they killed him. And Martin Luther King wrote a book, and he said, when we were pushing for economic inclusion, I had my white liberal friends and supporters with me. But the moment when I was pushing for civil rights, I had my white, liberal friends with me when we were pushing for civil rights. But the moment I started pushing for economic inclusion, you abandoned me. And he was hurt. And when he was going to deliver 500,000 poor people, mainly poor white people, to the nation's capital, he was doing the Poor People's March. And he was saying, hey, we have to have, we have to have economic inclusion for all Americans. He gave an amazing speech that's on YouTube at Stanford University called The Other America. And that's the speech that got him killed, where he said there are two Americas. One America has access to an education, opportunity, economic inclusion. The other America doesn't. There are two Americas. Two Americas will not survive. He was a prophet. He gave us that foresight over 50 years ago. And Coretta told me that was the speech that got him killed. And here we are. And I told her, we will deal. You've done enough. This generation will deal with the fourth and final chapter. My whole life will be dedicated to real economic inclusion. I'm chasing Rockefeller. If Rockefeller was alive today, he'd be worth 500 billion. I want it to be so profound and so seismic that it's undeniable. And she said to me, they will come after you. And that's what it's always been about, the money. They brought us here, Black people, to make them rich. And we were assets. And the moment we were freed, we became a liability. And that's when they started the genocide against us. But we have to now be smart about it and participate in the political process to make sure we're protected, to stop the genocide, and to start the economic inclusion. And we have an opportunity with Biden and Harris to achieve that. That's what I think is at stake.
April,
And
did you say something?
yes, Byron is so on point, and I love this economic conversation for our community, because so oftentimes we talk about civil rights instead of bringing the economics in it. I think about 1963, the March on Washington. Dr. King talked about this bounce check that our people were given, okay? This bounce check. What is a bounce check? That's economics. That's money in your pocket. And Byron hit on something about the economics, the reason why Dr. King was killed. It wasn't about civil rights. It wasn't about marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge and Bloody Sunday. It was about the economics. Do you realize that if Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy were still alive, those two were working on leveling the economic playing field for all people, including Appalachia. Appalachia is the poorest part of America. It's white America in Mitch McConnell's district, okay?
They don't want
Mitch
them to
McConnell's
that,
district.
they want them to hate us and focus on the race part rather than the unity part.
Well,
Exactly.
It's a distraction.
Right.
Look over here while I'm doing this.
Right. And Appalachia, let's talk about the mindset of Appalachia. Let's go back to the Affordable Care Act, better known as Obamacare. Yes, President Obama said, yes, Obama cares. So in Appalachia, get this, they said, oh, we like ACA, the Affordable Care Act, but we don't like Obamacare. It is one and the same.
Yeah.
And that's the mindset in Appalachia. So if, and within that 6-week span, 2 people were killed, Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. If those two would have lived, it would have been about leveling the playing field for all of us. And going back to Don's comments about housing, that's one piece of the economic equation for us. And people don't realize this, but he's right. We are now looking at Black home ownership like it was back in the 1960s during the struggles of civil rights. Bill Clinton oversaw the highest numbers of African Americans who owned homes in this nation. Then during the Bush years, the banks realized, said, wait a minute, let's prey on them. Foreclosures, we lost our leveraging piece. We lost the leveraging piece to build a business, to buy a strip mall, to send kids to school. We are losing ground. And how do we make it up? By holding these politicians accountable.
Yeah.
No matter who is president.
You can't let Biden not pay his check. He has a whole checkbook that he owes to Black Americans, but we can't let anybody else. I mean, the members of the CBC.
And Trump too. Let's say Trump too. Let's say Trump.
Oh, by the way, yeah. Look,
any politician is accountable.
When I was chairman of the caucus, that's when Trump won. So first of all, when I decided to give the Phoenix Award, Chairman's Award, to Robert Smith, there were members of the caucus who asked me who he was. So I had to explain who he was first. But once I'm a New York developer. Trump's office is a block away from mine. I know him. And so when he won, I said, we need to be like Henry Kissinger said. When Henry Kissinger said, America has no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, I said, you got a transactional president here right now. I mean, he is crazy and he is transactional. We need to try to move our agenda forward and focus on, because your role is not to be a cheerleader for a potential candidate or be the opposition. Your role as a member of Congress is to elect the people who voted you and empowered you to send you to Washington. So we got to tell them, don't give Biden a pass. Biden needs to be held accountable for economic reciprocity.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, Don, let me say this.
looking at
here because he has this contract with Black America that's actually really relevant to this moment right now, because we're talking about specific.
I want to talk about that, but also I just want the folks out there, for some of you who don't know Don Peebles, he is one of the most successful real estate developers in America, Black or white. And right now, he's developed all over the country, Miami, DC, New York, everywhere. And right now he's building the tallest building in Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles, at a cost of what is it, Don?
1.6 billion.
$1.6 billion. And it is, I mean, so Don is the real deal. And also Don is very, very, very much involved in politics. And he and I happen to be good friends, and we talk about politics all the time. So, and we have our debates. And so I just want everybody out there if you don't know Don, I want you to just be aware of him and understand his background.
But Trump is not an option at this moment for Black
no,
America.
no. But April, God forbid,
you have to hold everyone accountable.
If he wins, we cannot, the Black agenda, our agenda cannot go on pause. It can't go on pause for a month, a year, and it definitely can't go on pause for 4 years. Biden should win. When he does, he needs to pay up. And he should not get a pass. And paying up.
What is paying up, though? What does that mean? What does that mean, paying up?
Access to capital. Let me give you something simple. So, the biggest investors in entrepreneurship, technology, and the like are private equity firms. There's $70 trillion right now in private equity. That's who invests in real estate, tech companies, and so forth. And give you another statistic. Black women, in terms of a demographic, you all are responsible for 30% of the new small businesses created in America last year. 30%. Yep. Now, of that $70 trillion of private equity money, people of color and women, all races combined, get less than 1.3%. So there's no way to grow business without access to capital. And the contributors to
1.3% of the 70 trillion. They get less than one of the 70 trillion.
Of the 70 trillion, 1.3%. And the biggest investors to these private equity and venture capital firms are government public employee pension systems like the state of California, the state of New York, and so forth. And their contributors are disproportionately women and minorities. So we can't even get access to our own money. And so I've asked Biden's people to introduce some legislation, to have Congress introduce legislation to say that investments of public institutions should be reflective of the population demographics of the communities that they're investing in and where they're investing in. I mean, do you know that the federal pension system controlled by the President of the United States has not invested? They don't have one Black asset manager. I mean, not one.
Don, tell them how much money is in that pot of money. It's over $1 trillion.
Well over $1 trillion, almost two.
Somebody hand me my calculator.
So imagine, by the way, what do they say? And I think Q can appreciate this too. You don't succeed without failing. Mm-hmm. So imagine being in a world where you can be a billionaire if you bat 300. However, if you're Black, you need to bat 900 to 1,000 or you won't get any money. And even then you're gonna have to walk around and you're gonna have to spend 5 times as much of your time raising money. So what Biden can do is not look at us in the paternalistic way that so many white liberals look at us, but look at us as what Black Lives Matters to me means is that Black equal protection under the law matters. Black dreams matter. Black ambition matters. Black entrepreneurship matters. Those things matter. And that's what we need to say to him. Government contracts, I mean, look where they go. I mean, a minuscule amount goes to Black businesses. I mean, so there's many opportunities to do that. Or when Trump takes a group of his Wall Street friends over on a Middle East trip where they go on a state mission and come back with, $50 billion invested in their businesses, how come we can't have some Black people go? How come Byron Cube and other people can't go on Biden's trip? And I mean, we need to play by the same rules that everybody else plays for. And if we do, and by the way, Biden does not win without Black people. So if we give him the presidency,
1.3% of 7 trillion is 5.3462 E10.
So that
numbers just fell off the calculator.
So
it's a lot of money.
Yeah,
I want you to jump in.
You do it this way. Do it this way, okay?
Wait.
Just so we get it right, 10% of 70 trillion is 7 trillion. 10% of 70 trillion is 7 trillion.
It was 70.
Is
70 trillion. Okay, my bad.
7 trillion, right? And 1% of 7 trillion is 700 billion. I think I got that right. So what were you were asking Cube about something.
I don't even count in those numbers. I don't even count like that. So I don't know nothing.
But we need to, Tiffany, we need to, we need to start expanding. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, I got to start thinking in the T's and B's. I'm thinking in the M's.
You got to think trillion. Don't even think about millions. If you're thinking about millions, don't. You got to think billions and trillions. You were asking Cube about something.
Yes, because, Cube was talking about the contract with Black America, and that America likes to give the impression that it's broke and it can't do nothing for us and we can't do nothing for ourselves. Cube, just tell us all about that.
Well, I mean, that's the impression that everybody gives, is that America's ran like a household, and it's a household that's broke. And since we broke, we can't get you the stuff you need. But America creates currency. It's a currency creator, not a currency user. So you basically make as much money as you need to, as long as inflation don't go crazy. But I want to go back, because we talked about the 60s and we talked about the things that was implemented and done back then and for the reasons they were done. I believe, civil rights and going and fighting for everybody at the time was a great thing. We believe that was the answer to the promised land. But when we look at the data and you look after, 50 years and you look and you see we're still at the bottom of that, kind of kumbaya train. So I think it's time for us. So we're getting Black mixed with minority, mixed with diversity, mixed with whatever words they want to throw, people of color, and all these things. And that's the reason why we're not getting anything, because we have too many labels on top of what we're really trying to get access to. When you talk about Black people in America, you're talking about 13.45%. And then when you're talking about all minorities, you add another, you're talking about 70% of the country are minorities. So you're adding a whole lot of people on top of what we're trying to get. And when you look at any kind of data, when minorities are given grants and benefits and things like that, we're still at the 2% range. We're still only getting 2 and 3% of that. So the key is to make sure we're not singled out specifically, but that we're compensated specifically. The reason that all the pain in this country has come to a head is because it started with the original Black people who were slaves, then set free, then now put at the bottom of this society. So, we're gonna have to be recognized, even if we're recognized as a protected race, but we're going to have to be recognized as our own people, and we're going to have to be compensated for what was done. Because right now we're getting lost in the sauce and lost in the wash of everybody. And all these people are benefiting because of us. Yeah, the Department of Justice is suing Yale because Yale is not, they're not discriminating enough against Black people, and they're not letting enough Asians and white people in under the 14, 13, 15.
But Black people built, we built that bitch.
But like I'm saying, these things that were done for us are now being used against us because we're now basically counted with everybody. And that's why the problem is not being solved. We have to be taken care of specifically. We're actually losing Black communities. The Black community is starting to dissipate because there's nothing holding us together. And so we have to do something or we won't survive. That's what I'm talking about. We have to do something to make sure that America pays its debt to us specifically as descendants of slavery, and not just throw everybody into the Black or minority pool. So, we have to do this as Black people on how we identify ourselves, and not let people call us minorities and people of color and all these other things. We have to recognize who we are and make sure this company pays the debt to the actual people that it enslaved.
How many of you all support reparations? Just give me a
absolutely. I mean, reparations is an absolute must. And I mean, I have my ideas on how I think it should look. I think it should look like a minimum of $500 billion a year invested into the healthcare of Black America, the education of Black America, the economic inclusion of Black America, and just it is $500 billion a year invested. It is not a loan, it is an investment. And as we invest in America, America becomes even stronger. And Q brings up a great point. I've always said, whatever you do, don't fall into that minority trap.
That's right.
Because they redefine minority. So what happens is you have a lot of corporations out here, banks who hide behind the word minority. And what they're doing is they redefine minority. And minority is defined as white women. So they'll take all the business that they do with their daughters, their sisters, and their nieces and say, look at our minority record. I even told somebody, I said, do me a favor, call me the N-word before you call me a minority. Because if I allow you to define me as a minority, then you will treat me like I'm nothing. Because now you've positioned me to get nothing, okay? When you cannot be defined as a minority, because that you will not, because I say to them, show me your Black record, your Negro record, your colored record, whichever decade you pick. I want to know what you're doing with Black people, not minorities, because that's a word they use to make sure Black people get nothing.
It's really worse than that now, Byron. It's worse than that, because now with these public pension systems, back in the 1980s, when Maxine Waters and others were putting pressure on them to diversify their asset managers, it was minority. It's now emerging. So it means emerging managers, emerging asset managers, which are minorities, women, and first, second, third time asset managers. Cube makes a very critical point. The reality is that we are very different, and our history with this country is very different than anyone else. We were kidnapped. Our ancestors were kidnapped, dragged over to this country under deplorable conditions, and tortured, abused, and we built this company for 250 years, essentially. And then another 100 years of second-class citizenship and oppression and terrorism, and still building this country with below market wages. And so America owes Black people and the descendants of slaves a debt for services rendered. The other people who come to this country, who immigrate here, they immigrate here and are seeking a better life, and most often are finding it. They actually owe the country a debt. But this country owes a debt to two groups of people, African Americans and Native Americans, who get slaughtered and stole the country from in the first place. And diluting that and throwing us and into a bucket with other people and a minority class diminishes the role that we played in building this country, including the White House, by the way, which was built with slave labor.
Yeah, we built that too. And we working in there too.
Tiffany,
let me ask. Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Sure. Go ahead.
Now the Japanese. Okay, let's go back to the war not too long ago, a little while ago. The Japanese bombed Hiroshima, right? No, they bombed Hawaii, right? And then they got put in internment camps, right? And they was there for a couple of years, few years. Then when they got out, didn't they get reparations?
Yes, they did.
Didn't y'all get reparations?
Yeah.
And they bought up Lamert Park and all these areas and stuff in Los Angeles. Now, why do you think they got reparations? Because they had a whole country that was willing to blow this motherfucker up, or like? And it seems like everybody that gets reparations in America got some.
So can I?
That would be so big, Tiffany, to us. The debt's very big. And that's another issue. It's economics too.
So let me
say this real quick to you, April.
Because why did they get reparations? We didn't get none.
Well, real simple. Here's what happens. You know, we have the power, right? When you vote, and really, if you really lean in and donate money, when you donate money to politicians and you're controlling the narrative as to who becomes, who gets into power, you start to get what you want. And you have to really think about the fact Andrew Gillum almost became governor of Florida, which we desperately need to win and provide. He lost by half a point. But we as Black people have to say, hey, here's 10 million bucks from Black people. That's a million Black people sending in 10 bucks. We could have had Stacey Abrams be the first Black female governor in America and the governor of Georgia. She lost by a little bit better than a point as well, right? We have to lean in and donate. I want to share something with you real quick why this is so important. Trump won Florida by 113,000 votes. In Miami, 379,000 Black people did not vote, okay? In Michigan, I'm from Detroit, Trump won Michigan by 11,000 votes. In Detroit, half of my family, 277,000 Black people didn't vote, okay? Trump won Michigan by 11,000. Trump in Pennsylvania won by 44,000 votes. In Philadelphia, 238,000 Black people didn't vote. And here's the last one. Trump won Georgia by 211,000 votes. In Atlanta, 530,000 Black people didn't vote. Black America. And when we lean in, we get it done. Now, if we vote the way we should vote and we donate money, politicians will address your agenda. And if your agenda is economic inclusion and healthcare and reparations, they will get it done, because what politicians will say, I am not pissing off Black people. They donate money and they vote. That's when it gets fixed. Look at what I.
So is that what the Japanese did? They gave a bunch of money to the right politicians?
But I got the answer, Tiffany. I got the answer for you. Okay. First of all, Donald Trump isn't even having these conversations about reparations. They're still trying to figure out where Frederick Douglass is, okay?
Right.
Let's go there. Okay, now let me take you back. By the grace of God, I've had 23 years at the White House, and I can tell you the stories from whence I know. And Don, you may remember these stories being with the CDC. Now, when then President Bill Clinton was president, he embarked on this thing called the Race Initiative. Remember that? For those of us who are old enough. And he wanted to, he had the forethought to, and he had the foresight to understand we were a nation that was browning, and he wanted to heal the racial divide before it got to this, okay? So he had conversations, and one of the main conversations at the beginning of this was healing the divide between Black and white America. And what was the piece that they started talking about? Slavery. I was the one quite often asking, Mr. President, are you going to apologize for slavery? And this is where all of the stuff came in, where we are not a monolith. We have all different thoughts about slavery, about reparations. So the president, instead of taking it on himself, he gave it to the Race Commission. The Race Commission didn't know how to handle it because you had people in the Congressional Black Caucus saying, oh no, I don't think Black people should be paid. I think it should go to education. And then there were others who were in the civil rights community and in the CBC, or Black leaders, kitchen cabinet members, what have you, who were Black, saying, well, I think that some people should be paid monetarily. And Black people could not come together on an understanding of what reparations should look like. So it was tabled, Tiffany. And then, so listen to this, but if we go back to reparations, let's talk, it's not 40 acres in a mule cube, it's 40 acres. Now, for the Union soldiers who were in the Civil War, yes, we were in the Civil War too.
Yes, we was.
Yes, we were, Tiffany.
Yes, we was.
Revolutionary War too.
Yep.
Yeah, we were in the Civil War. And General Sherman said, you know, it was part of this promise to the Union soldiers. I'm going to give them 40 acres of land each for fighting once this is over. Well, it went up the chain to the head of the army, and they said, yes, this is great. It was never ratified. Never ratified. And then the mule came in later. I don't know where the mule came in, but the mule came in. But Tiffany and Q and Don and Byron and Natasha, if indeed, stop laughing, Byron, but I mean, this really is something. If indeed we were to qualify and quantify what reparations in the way General Sherman talked about, and we added the mule, it would look like a house in the Potomac and a couple of Maybachs, okay, financially.
Yeah.
Byron, I think there needs to be a payment to us for education, builders in certain zip codes where we are, because you know education is about your zip code. You know, I think in healthcare, we need that. We need that infused, but we also need that wealth building that they promised us, the financial payment. But with that payment, there needs to be an education of how to utilize, how to be a Tiffany Haddish who wants to go out there and build communities. An Ice Cube who's got businesses, a Don who's doing his thing, a 1-point-something billion with the B building, and Byron Allen's doing the damn thing. I can say that on Zoom, not on TV, you know. but you know,
I've been cussing. I'm sorry.
Okay,
you're all right. So anyway, but at the end of the day, and then you had George W. Bush, who said, "I'm not going to apologize for slavery," because when you apologize, you're admitting a wrong, and then you bring restitution. They didn't want to apologize because that restitution was financial.
that's right.
George W. Bush didn't apologize because he said, oh, well, it wasn't just us who did it. The Africans also participated. But why didn't you acknowledge you're wrong? And then when it came to Obama, people were like, don't even touch Obama. Why would the first Black president have to apologize for slavery when he had nothing to do with it? And you know Donald Trump ain't even talking about this. So this has been a conversation that I've witnessed over 20 years ago. So I get what you're saying. Other communities get all sorts of apologies and reparations, but one of the reasons why Bill Clinton did not apologize for, because we as a people could not come together on it.
Right, but we got to hold
pay it out.
But April, you got to make it so that you get the deal up front. You can't say, hey, I'm helping deliver the presidency to you. Oh, and you won now and you're president. Here's our agenda. I mean, I think same thing with Biden is that, I mean, you want our support. Go and tell everybody, say it publicly, what you're going to do. And what is your position on reparations? Articulate it, and what's the plan for paying them? I mean,
so you know the CBC is studying it. That's
Black
the way
politicians
right now. The CBC is studying it. It's no more study. This thing has been up for study every year. Congressman John Conyers would bring it up. We have talked about this over and over ad nauseum. It's time to, and I'm going to tell you, Ice Cube, I am one of those on the census. I am African American. I am 5 generations removed from the last known slave in my family who was sold in the auction block in Fayetteville, North Carolina. His name was Joseph Dollar Brown.
All right now. Well, listen, This is as we wrap up, I just have to point this
Wait,
out.
Natasha, we are in a pandemic. I don't have anywhere to go. Q,
Oh,
I got stuff to do. I'm over here trying to create money and opportunity for my community, sir.
I know, but
I want to start my own investment group. Can I start my own investment group with just black people? Is that racist?
70 trillion. You should get some of that 70 trillion.
You can.
I know our guests can't stay forever. I love y'all. We could talk forever, but I have to ask.
What you got, Q? Only because Q wanted to jump in here and say something. What you got, baby?
Go ahead.
I think it's important too, you know, when you're telling people to vote, is how to vote. You know, a lot of people don't understand how many different things they're going to be able to vote on. You know, some people just think it's just the presidency, but there are things up and down the ticket, like Tiffany was talking about when it comes to community, DAs, sheriffs, judges.
Policies.
Yeah, so Congress, men and women, senators. So there's a lot to vote on, and I think people need to understand that it's just not the top of the ticket, because the last thing you want to do is get there and not be prepared and you know, in California we got propositions. So now is the time to educate yourself on what's being voted on. And I don't want to hear nobody, I mean, it's Google now. Nobody should be asking no dumb questions when they can just Google it and then at least get halfway there on what
you
they
so
want to
right,
learn.
Q, because I used to vote like this. Whatever name or thing I heard the most, that's what I voted for. And now I know better, because that's the one that got more money behind it. That's the one that got probably the corruption behind it. So do your research about every single person, especially local. Especially local.
I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of people don't admit that. And that kind of goes to the big question I want us to dig into is our brother Shaq at 48 years old just admitted that this is the first time that he voted, and he's not by himself. A lot of people are in that situation. So what do we say?
Snoop Dogg.
I mean, I've been voting since I was 18.
Yeah, so let's talk to the folks who have not and who are thinking about sitting out. How do we engage them in a way that's not just vote because your ancestors did it? You know, how do we really get people to realize what's at stake? What would you say to them if they're thinking about, I'm not really feeling it, I'm not going to come out? What do we say to them?
You know what?
I mean, educate yourself. Educate yourself on who you voting for. Because if you're just going to be a dumb voter, then that makes no difference. You know, you want to make sure you're voting for your interests and not just voting to follow the herd. So you got to educate yourself. Take time. It definitely matters. So, you know, take a little time. You know, maybe we need to get off Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff a little bit and go and really educate yourself on the issues dealing in your state, city, and just be a smart voter.
Listen,
I would say, you see that pothole that keep messing your rims up? That's because you didn't vote for the right councilman to make sure your streets is okay. You see how these tents is up and down this street over here, just popping up out of nowhere, and ain't nobody doing nothing about it because you didn't vote for the right person. You see how it's dogs running around all wild because you didn't vote for the right person. You see how your streets flooded every time it rains because the storm drains is filled up because we ain't got the right kind of trash sanitation going on over here. You know why? Because you didn't vote for the right person. And if you don't feel like going in, I don't want to go stand in that line. I don't got time to be driving over there on a Tuesday, but I don't have it on a Saturday. Hey, you can do it at your house while you watching TV, listening to your music, fill out the ballot, and then put it in the little envelopes, put the little signature on there, whatever, put your stamp. Some of them don't even have stamps. And mail that bitch. And you good. You good. I already did my voting. I'm done. I studied everything. I even put I had all the props. I got this thing called Voice Dreamcast. And then you can you can download everything in there and then it read it to you. Even if you can't read, you can listen. Even if you can't read, you can listen. If you washing dishes, you can listen to these props and be like, oh, wait a minute. That's gonna make it where my babies ain't gonna have no books in school. That's gonna make it where we can't get laptops. That's gonna make it where our Wi-Fi, they about to put they about to dig for oil over here. Now we about to be in an environmental situation. Like, you need to read these prompts. You need to see what's up. The stem cell stuff, the health stuff. Like, they are trying to make us experiments. They are
You know,
experimenting in our communities on us. Like, you have to pay attention to these things. And so you could be like, I don't want to vote for any of these politicians. I don't care about none of them. But still look, because you can get their phone number. You could call them and be like, yo, what's up with these potholes though? What's up with this though? Why my storm drains always filled? Why this always? And they will make those calls. They will do stuff for you.
That's right. Now, Tiffany brings up a great point. And by the way, this is very important. If you don't vote for, let's say, Biden and Harris, that is a vote for Donald Trump. You are voting. You just voted by not showing up. And the reason why you have to lean in and vote is you have to understand Black America is positioned to fail. Black America is experiencing genocide. And the way I want to explain this to everybody out here, and this just takes a minute. There was a book written in 1916 called The Passage of the Great Race. It was written by a young white guy who was well-to-do in New York up, 1916. He went to law school. I think he went to Columbia or something like that. He was upset about the immigration of people out of Europe into New York City. He didn't like the immigration, so he wrote this book and said, stop the immigration, keep America white, keep America pure. This book in 1916 took off in Washington, D.C. The white politicians loved it and started changing immigration laws. Then this young man read the book and said, this book is the greatest book ever. It's my Bible, was his quote. That young man was Adolf Hitler. So not only did we as America create racism, we exported it all the way to Europe. It came back as World War II and the Holocaust. As a matter of fact, Hitler told his Nazi lawyers, go to America and study the Jim Crow laws that they're using on the Negroes and come back and use them on the Jews.
He called the governor of California to find out how he's sterilizing all the Black people. Don't get me started. Right there in McLaren Hall, where they put my little black ass.
Hitler gave an interview to the New York Times, and he said, I don't understand why America is working against me. Everything I learned about immigration control, I learned from America. I thought you would be my partner. So what you're seeing is the genocide through making sure you don't have proper education, access to capital, jobs. Everybody, Black America's positioned to fail. How do you get out of that matrix? How do you get out of that genocide? You have to get involved in the political process, vote up and down the ticket, and to Don's point, hold the politicians accountable. Make sure we get access to an education, access to bank loans that aren't predatory, jobs, mentorship, economic inclusion, or the genocide against Black America will continue if you don't vote. That's it.
Byron, think about this. Remember that 20 years ago, there was a proposition in California that outlawed affirmative action in educational access and contracting. On the ballot right now is Proposition 209 to restore affirmative action. And so and get rid of that limitation. That in itself is a reason to vote. Because what happens is everybody's paying attention to the big ticket items on the electorate, and then it's the propositions, it's the voter initiatives, it's the charter changes and so forth that are locally and state driven that really have an impact on our lives. So if Black Americans, if we want to change our position, we need to exercise our power to vote and vote our interest.
That's it.
And it's that simple. And if you want to change, you want a better life, a better shot, a better opportunity for your family, you got to vote, and you got to be knowledgeable. Like Cube said, you got to be educated about what you're doing and not be just crazy or stupid about who you're voting for, but vote based on a deliberative exercise of who you're going to pick, who's in your best interest.
And remember, you are Black America. You must always remember this. You are the most powerful vote in America, because the white vote is usually split 50-50, and Black America is the deciding vote, which is why so much time, energy, money, and resources are invested to suppress your vote, to make sure you're not counted, because you are controlling things. You are determining who is running this country. That is enormous power, and you must exercise your power. It is the most powerful thing you can do. Vote, 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 and make sure everybody you know and love and breathing votes, and help them vote. It is your power. And you will start to see things change for us as we donate money to politicians and we vote. Because the one thing politicians need to know, I'm not messing with Black people. They donate money and they vote. And even if it's $5, $10, powerful.
April, if someone never voted before, what do you say to them? I know you said before, don't get invested in a superstar. Think about your interests. What would be your message to somebody who's never done it? Maybe they're scared, they're intimidated. What would you tell them?
Like Beyonce said, vote like your life depends on it, because it does. Your pocketbook depends on it. Your housing depends on it. Your health depends on it. Your confrontation with police depends on it. Everything depends on it. Like Tiffany so articulately said, talked about the environmental issues, talked about the potholes. Everything is about either doing a mail-in ballot or pulling levers or signing something on November 3rd or early voting. Your life literally depends on this moment in time. Every aspect of your life. Affirmative action, if you get contracts, if you're a businessman, just your life, everything, every piece of your life, the quality of your life, the quantity of your life. This is it. This one is it.
All right. Family, this was an amazing conversation.
It was.
I apologize for cussing so much, but then when I get passionate, I can't help myself.
Tiffany, this is the internet. You can do whatever you want. Cube, you said 18 when you cast your first ballot?
18, yeah.
18. Tiffany, how old were you when you cast your first ballot?
24, 22.
24, 22? Okay, that's good.
Somewhere in there.
Don, you?
I was 18 and 20, and I was 20 in the first presidential election, 1980.
Amazing.
Yep, Carter was running for re-election.
All right, April, what about you?
18, and I followed suit with what my parents did. They made it an event, and I'm doing the same thing with my children. And my youngest daughter turns 13 on November 3rd, and my oldest daughter, who's 18, this is her second election, the primary and now the general.
Amazing. And Byron, Mr. Allen, how old were you when you cast your first vote?
1980, I was 19 years old. The presidential election, 1980. I was 19 years old.
Amazing. And I didn't even exist. I love that. All right.
For real?
In 1980, I was not even a thought. But
I thought we was the same age. Damn.
That's all right, girl. I am so happy about this. GRIO family, if you love this conversation, please hit share at the bottom and make sure your family and your community hears this conversation. The polls are open right now. So go out, get that early voting done. Don't wait until November 3rd. You can get it done right now, and make sure you help somebody else exercise their power at the polls. Thank you so much for joining Vote for Your Life. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.